My name's Brian Clark. Thank you for joining me. I'm here with a beautiful new friend, Brendan. We're at a Song of the Morning Yoga Retreat where I live and serve. Brendan's been good enough to sit down with me to tell me his rather remarkable story. Your relationship with animals is really what is the draw here, right? You have a remarkable ability to connect with the natural world, with animals. There's your YouTube and Instagram and all that is full of the most incredible images of you with chipmunks and raccoons and birds and geese and I'm sure many deer, many others that I
Yeah. And what I do with the YouTube channel is I'm always mixing some sort of an inspirational message with the wildlife. It all started back in 2017, and like yourself, I was just on a journey to understand the truth in everything. Being here in the world, I just kind of figured that there's no power in ignorance. So I was just on a quest for wisdom in all things and understanding. So I started reading books, spirituality books. Everything for me changed when I read Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And I was reading it, taking a GO train downtown Toronto for work, 5:13 a.m. And I'd been working down there for 12 years and taking that super early morning train. And one morning I was there and on the third floor and something flew from like 20 rows ahead and landed on my shoulder. And I looked and it was this big brown praying mantis. And it was the most unusual thing. It was hanging out almost like it was tame. And I was like, this is one of the most unusual encounters of my life. And it rode the train ride with me and we got off and I walked off and people thought it was my pet. And I'm like, this is incredibly bizarre. So I took a photo of it, I posted it on Facebook, and people are like, you need to look up the spirit animal meaning of praying mantis. So I did, and it, one of the main meanings was it's a call to go deeper into prayer and meditation. And I was at about the point in the book when they have the insert for the home meditation lessons in Autobiography of a Yogi. So I decided on a lark I would just sign up for the home lessons, and those home lessons changed my life through the Self-Realization Fellowship. And I did some research after. I joined a praying mantis group on Facebook, and I kind of explained my situation, and people identified it as like a male Chinese mantis. They're not native to Ontario at all, so who knows how the heck it ended up on a train. I didn't even know praying mantises come in the color brown till one was on my shoulder. But that kind of was the beginning of this journey, for sure.
Did you make something of it right away, or did you kind of brush it off as just some coincidence, or what did you think?
It was really, there's two ways you can always look at it, and I think that's where our free will comes in. We can always come up with some sort of a rational explanation for anything. I could say, maybe this was somebody's pet and it got loose, and maybe it flew in and just for some reason, random happenstance, it ended up on my shoulder. After the fact, I put it down on some fencing and took a picture of it, and my whole shoulder felt like somebody was pouring water down and almost like I got an acupuncture treatment. And I'm like, that could just be power suggestion or something, who knows? So we have the choice. We can explain it away with a rational explanation, or we can engage in the call to adventure spiritually. And I think for a lot of us, we have that sliding door moment when something happens and it's almost an invitation to be spiritually adventurous. And for me, it was to take the Praying Mantis Challenge and sign up for these home meditation lessons that changed my life.
Wow. So where to go from there?
So then what would happen is I'd start to have some encounters with dragonflies that were unusually friendly and butterflies, and really kind of crazy encounters too, because I was working on the 15th floor of a building downtown Toronto. And the one common link with it all was that I was usually talking about Paramahansa Yogananda, or I had one of his books with me in all of these encounters initially. And so, I'd talk about him, and then somebody I was with would say, there's a butterfly in the window behind you, like 15 floors up, flitting behind my head or something like that. And this happened a number of times with a number of different people.
Wow.
And then I remember it was a number of years ago, I was reading a book and I went outside and a bird flew and landed on my elbow. And hung out on my elbow, and that was the first time a bird landed on me. And I was reading The Divine Romance by Yogananda at the time. So that was the common link and common element. And then after that, what happened was when COVID began, a lot of people were discouraged, and there was a lot of negativity, understandably so, and a lot of fear and doubt. And I thought, well, what can I do? And I thought at this time I started to post some of the nature stuff. People were really, it seemed like they were really being uplifted by some of the nature footage I was showcasing. You know, at the beginning of COVID, I decided I was going to use this time to give back to nature, because it was kind of like we were giving nature a healing break. People weren't driving cars or anything like that. So I thought, I'm going to really embrace this. So I bought my first bird feeder, and I was really excited about the idea of making friends with birds, and a raccoon broke it, like on one of the first days I had it, and like knocked it down and broke the plexiglass and everything else. And I told my wife, I said, that's it. I'm going to make friends with that raccoon. And I was taking inspiration from St. Francis of Assisi, who treated animals like family. You know, I tell people to treat animals like friends, because sometimes for some people, family isn't necessarily a good association. You know, so, or you could say spirit family. And I named the raccoon Bo Peep. It was just the name that came to me. So we're like, oh, I hope Bo Peep comes by again today. And people vilify raccoons. People consider them more of a nuisance animal. A couple weeks later, Bo Peep showed up at our door, and we realized Bo Peep was a female because she brought her 4 babies to meet us. So my wife and I, we went outside and we befriended the babies, and it wasn't long before I'd have the babies on my lap. Like a grandpa giving a horsey ride to some of these baby raccoons and stuff, and a lot of that stuff really picked up and became popular. And then I had a chipmunk just sit on my lap one day, and I decided to start to befriend the chipmunks. And
just out of the blue.
I was reading a book, and a chipmunk crawled up my leg and sat on my lap and just looked at me. And I looked at the chipmunk back, and I'm like, this is really unusual. Like, it's just here to just stare me in the eyes, you know? So
how do you explain that? How do you, why did the chipmunk give you its darshan?
I think that the only honest answer I can give is that it's a mystery to me as well.
Okay.
You know, there are so many forces beyond our everyday awareness that we may not understand, that are just beyond what the senses can tell us. So who knows how spiritual forces are working in other realms and influencing things. It's not too far of a stretch to talk about this, because we know that there's voices and images of people going through the air in radio waves and TV signals and everything else. So who knows what other invisible realities are coexisting with us and how it's influencing our everyday experiences.
Yeah. But there's a mystery to it, but there's also, it sounds like there's an intentional aspect too. Like you intentionally said, I'm going to befriend this raccoon, and it worked. So would you describe it as you're attracting these animals magnetically somehow?
Anything's possible. I would say if anything, when I'm dealing with animals, I don't have any fear at all, and no negative judgment. The way that I look at animals is I look at them as evolving souls. You know, they're learning basic lessons of foraging and food and just staying alive. And then eventually, as they work their way up the spiritual evolutionary scale, they start to learn more complex themes related to unconditional love and other things, right, that we deal with in the curriculum of being human. So that's the way I look at them, with a little bit of compassion. Just like us, they've got consciousness, they've got curiosity, family ties and bonds, and they want to avoid pain. And they enjoy the pleasure of food just like we do. So I just look at them as evolving souls and have compassion on them.
And then whatever happens from there is what happens.
Who knows? Maybe they can sense that. You know, a lot of people say that, you know, they'll be like, oh, well, my dog is really good at reading people's personalities and stuff like that. So I think on some level the animals might be able to sense our intentions. And so I just try to keep my intentions just pure, unconditional love towards them all. Beautiful.
This is reminding me a little bit of, there's a book about Ramana Maharshi, the great sage of India. And he just loved animals and had that. A lot of the saints that I know about have that special relationship or that deep understanding and deep connection. And in his case, there's a chapter on his relationship with the cows and the dogs of the ashram, and the one that sticks out in my mind is the monkeys. And he talks about it in very similar language that you just talked about, and just a keen awareness of their survival instincts, but then their family dynamics, and it's relatable to the human experience, but it's unique to each species, and it's beautiful to to witness that in the way that, or to see it a little bit through your lens or through Ron Maharshi's lens helps me to feel that connection.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that reminds me of is, for me, one of the main motives in reaching out to these lesser spiritually evolved beings is my awareness and gratitude of how other higher beings have looked out for us. So I mentioned Yogananda already, and if Yogananda didn't do what he's done in sharing his profound wisdom through his books and teachings and organizations, my life would be a complete mess. I would be so incredibly worldly and lost. And other higher beings that have just devoted themselves to helping us out by sharing breakthrough, liberating wisdom that's really accelerated us. And then who knows in what ways these higher beings are supporting us in humble ways they don't take credit for. Sometimes you might be stuck on a problem in life and then suddenly the answer just comes to you. And it wasn't like a linear thought progression that led to it. It's like, did I really come up with that answer? Or is something else whispering the answer into my mind? And sometimes just finding the right words in a situation, and who knows how much these other beings are influencing us in our best moments, in the same way that the animals may not realize how much we might be helping them out in certain ways, putting food out for them and stuff that they may not see who had done it for them to help them out and stuff like that. So for me, I'm always trying to stay grateful of those higher beings that have helped us out and trying to pass it along to those who might be below us.
Beautiful. I want to ask you about what was your relationship with nature before these, I'm going to call them miracles, started happening. Miracles is such a rich topic to discover, because in a sense, everything's a miracle. But when I think of miracles, I think of just those things that seem to violate the laws of physics as we understand them with our...
I'm sure there's a nicer word than violate. But, all the physics experts are like, yes, that's how we feel right now. We're at a loss to explain this. I feel violated and insulted that this has happened. All
right, so insert your nice word of choice in there. But to transcend the laws of the natural world as we think we understand it, and we really don't. Like you said, there's so much about life that if we have the humility to see with fresh eyes, we realize we don't know anything about what's really going on. But so what was your relationship to the natural world, to animals, especially before these miracles started happening to you?
Yeah.
And how did that change?
First of all, I'd say as far as miracles go, I think the greatest miracle of all is how we are supported by unseen forces. Pulling a bird to the hand is one thing, but we ate breakfast this morning. It looked like lembas bread from Lord of the Rings. I don't know what it was, but all I know is this. I ate it, and once I eat food, it's a mystery what happens next. But the nutrients get broken down and distributed to the precise body parts that need it, and that's due to no skill of my own. The same thing with my immune system is fighting off all these invaders on a daily basis. It's no skill of my own. On the same level, keeping my heart beating while I'm sleeping, that's no skill of my own. So for me, the greatest miracle is all the unseen support we have, and then all the contributions from other people that have helped us in life. As far as the nature piece go, I was just distracted with working downtown in Toronto, Ontario, and I was working for a medical company, and so for me, I wasn't really too engaged with nature. When it started to happen to me, I almost felt like, why me? This should happen to somebody who's enthusiastic about nature. I'm more enthusiastic about it now, but it was nature that kind of got me on board rather than the other way around. And my wife Ashley works in the environmental field. So she actually knows a lot about birds and stuff like that. Sometimes I didn't even know a bird existed until it flew into my hand, and I'm just like, that was an interesting one. I got to look up what that was. And the way I look at it is, if I was to try to explain this and why it's happening, I would say it's probably happening so that I can use these experiences probably to get people's attention as a means to a greater end, which is, give them what they want, and then you can give them something they need, which might be a beautiful message or an uplifting message they needed to hear that day, whether it's you matter, or whether it's let's be more in love with nature, or suggesting to people that when we love greatly, we live greatly, as a mantra on how to live. If you can inspire people to be better humans, we'll have a better planet. So for me, I think that this whole nature thing is probably just a means to an end in order to maybe share some messages like that can benefit suffering humanity.
I really appreciate that you have that perspective and offer that. I mean, it's really beautiful. And I'm grateful for that. Because it does catch your attention. I mean, this footage is incredible. The ones that really stick out to me are the birds, because there's many videos I'll try to describe for our listeners where you just stick out your hand and sometimes a bird will land in it. Sometimes many birds will hop around on your fingers. It's a superpower that you seem to have to call animals like St. Francis of Assisi or Dr. Dolittle comes to mind.
Thank you for not saying Disney princess.
Is that?
I get that one the most.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have enough kids in my life
to
know that reference,
all
but
right.
I love that you're using that as a gateway to explore, truth and love and proliferate that message in the world. But I want to hone in on this conversation to really get to the essence of what that is, that experience of holding your hand out.
So sure, I'll explain it. I mean, there's two levels I can explain it on. One is that I do feed birds and feed animals. I put food out for them, and there may be some facial recognition there. So for those who want to believe it's as simple as that, I'm giving you your cookie. Okay, you can enjoy it. And for me, that's one of the ways we can show animals love. Mm-hmm. Giving them food. It's one of the ways they can experience love. If you try to pet a wild animal, it has no idea what you're doing. If you're offering it food and repeatedly offering it food, then it starts to get this sense of connection. Everyone's got a love language, as Gary Chapman wrote the book. Yeah. For animals, a lot of times food is the love language, at least initially. Mm. So I do feed animals as well. I mean, that doesn't explain a lot of the footage you've seen. Mm-hmm. And certainly, there's been a lot of cases where, even when we went to Florida, we went for a nature walk, and I saw a bird that looked like a blue jay, and I called it over, and the next thing I know, I've got 3 scrub jays on me. And they're an endangered species. We didn't even know what they were. Wow. We looked it up after. We're like, oh my gosh, there's only like 2,000 in the world. And I had 2 on my head and 1 on my arm.
So describe for people what that is when you say called it over. What do you mean?
Yeah. So it's almost like feeling like an intuitive guidance. Mm. Almost like a voice within, like just reach out and then see what happens. And I sort of just listen to that inner voice. And if I don't get an inner sanction, I don't do anything. I think as much as we can kind of quiet some of the mental storms we might have, some of our fears and anxieties, and the more we start to quiet some of the noise in the background, the more we can hear that voice, and it can guide us in many exciting ways. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times people are like, well, I want to be like you and be able to call animals into the hand and stuff like that. And I'll say to them, first of all, I'm just reflecting to you a potential you have inherent within you. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I would say, second of all, no good comes from me, it comes through me. All right, so I feel like I'm just being used as a channel for a force that's greater than me, but this is not Brendan Fox, who normally has nothing to do with nature, that, has figured out how to crack the code by studying nature books or anything. Right. I tell people, look, that might seem exciting, but there's an even more exciting skill that we should prioritize. And I think that is the skill of keeping your inner peace. Mm. What really matters if you can't keep your inner peace? If you can call birds into your hand, but the slightest thing can set you off and ruin your day because you misplaced your phone or somebody cut you off in traffic, what does that all matter for, right? I used to imagine my inner peace was like a football or a rugby ball. And I'd imagine, you got to hold on to the ball all day and just get to the end of the day. And if anybody knocks the ball loose and you fumble it, you want to recover it right away. And you know what? If you can't recover your inner peace, you got teammates in life, and they can help you recover the ball. So it's like, if you're struggling with something that happened to you, you can reach out to a friend or a worthy family member or mentor or coach and ask them to help you see it differently, to give you a corrective of perspective, and they can help you regain your inner peace. But to me, I treated life like a game. Like, this is just a game of keeping your inner peace, and you want to hang on to the ball all the way to the finish line. And then I think if you really start to hone in on that and take that seriously, then I think it opens up a lot of peace and joy and love, and then a lot of exciting things start to happen. Mm-hmm. But I think it starts and ends with just keeping your inner peace.
Amen, brother. Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful message. It's reminding, this anecdote is probably not the best to share because I don't know the names and I heard it sort of secondhand, but there's somebody who is in this same kind of world that is just like a savant with animals. Let's say that's the gift that they have is connecting with the natural world in this incredible way. Is he has all these incredible experiences with all these different animals by keeping inner peace, and this is the mantra. It's just like clear head, peace, and love radiates out, and with that clear mind, it opens up an avenue to connect with nature. Well, he'd always wanted to have an experience with, I believe, a fox. And so he finally, but it always eluded him, that finally he has the opportunity to connect with the fox. And sure enough, as soon as that happens, the thought enters his mind. That the fox is getting closer. He knows how to do this. He's in his element. And then the thought enters his mind. Oh, this is so cool. I'm going to connect with this fox. And as soon as the thought comes, the fox scatters. Because the peace, the tranquility was shattered. So to me, that was a very instructive, spiritual lesson, really. And it's the same message that I hear you saying. It's when we're in that peaceful state, maybe it's miracles will happen. Maybe it's the most, subtle, simple miracle of just being at peace, which is, as good as it gets in some ways. But the way that radiates out and plays with animals, with human beings, in our communities, in our world is one of the keys, really.
I always renounce the sense of separate self. I renounce the idea of individuality when I'm on a nature walk. So instead of thinking, oh, this is really cool happening to me, I'm almost trying to be in the moment and be one with whatever is there and be like, I'm almost in the chipmunk, I'm inside the raccoon, I'm inside the bird as well, and things are just merging together. I was really excited to meet a fox too. I thought, I'd love to meet a fox because it's our family name, last name, and everything else. There was a wildlife refuge that I went to visit, and I said, look, I'm just going to do some videos for you guys. With a wildlife refuge in particular, I think it's very beautiful because I think, helping animals in need awakens compassion in us. It awakens compassion in those who witness and hear about the event. It's helpful to the animal. I think it just helps us to be more loving. So I think anything that helps human beings be more loving is worth supporting. So I went to the wildlife refuge and they introduced me to this fox. Her name was Emmy. And it was one of the most fun experiences. She was licking my hand like a little dog. I got her to roll over and everything else. I was just one with everything in the moment.
So for people listening that don't understand exactly what that means or how one might access that state, could you describe, is that a conscious process? Is it just something that intuitively happens?
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably been a journey of shifting perspective and trying to get rid of the sense of ego that helps us to do that. For example, one of the things I do is, starting with my name, I realize my name is nothing but a rumor my parents started. So I called them out on it. I said, you started this rumor, my name is Brendan Fox. I did not come out with a name tag. You've been telling everyone that's my name. You put it on this thing called a birth certificate, so now it must be true. I kind of surrendered that idea that that's my real name. And then I always try to see everyone in society as an extension of our greater self. As Peace Pilgrim would say, we're all like cells in the body of humanity. If I was left alone from birth, I would be very beast-like, probably eating bugs, freezing to death, living a brutal lifestyle if I was left alone from birth. The lifestyle I have right now is made possible by the labors and contributions of countless beings. It's made possible by the city workers who pave the roads and take care of the garbage. It's made possible by the people who grow our food and make it so easy for us to purchase it instead of growing it ourselves. The people that make our clothing. If I had to make my own clothing, I'd settle for a burlap sack and punch some holes in it. Society really does contribute to us in so many ways. Everyone who's lived before us has contributed to the life we have now. Our ancestors that have put up with drought, war, plague, famine, so we could have this life with these opportunities. People who have invented the automobile and airplane and everything else. And so when I look at the life I enjoy right now, I realize that I am less than 1% of that success equation by any stretch. And I think when we do this, there's a lot of trade-off here, because a lot of people will say, a little bit of pride is a good thing. You should be proud of who you are and everything else. And I would ask you, is a little bit of evil a good thing? Because pride is a gateway thought that leads to evil. It leads to ultimately ingratitude. Because when we say, I am the doer, I'm proud of what I did, what we're not doing, the opportunity cost, is we're not being grateful and paying attention to all those who have contributed to everything we do. For me, I always ask myself, who had to do a good job so I could do a good job? And I rep it to fatigue until I might start off thinking, oh, that was really cool what I did. And I'm like, oh, hold on, that's not a good thought. I might think I'm 100% the doer on something. And then I ask myself, who had to do a good job so I could do a good job? And I break it down until I'm less than 1%. And then I feel more supported, because you realize how supported you always are. And that does away with a lot of that fear. That helps us keep inner peace. I think the more that we can kind of abolish this idea of individuality and separate self, the easier it is to keep our inner peace, because you start to live in a constant awareness that you're loved and protected and supported by not only the rest of society, but invisible forces that you may not even totally understand.
That's interesting that it leads you there. I think when people say a little bit of pride is a healthy thing, it's coming from that, like, we should be self-confident, autonomous beings, that because people suffer with self-doubt and all these things that can bring you down. And what I'm hearing you say is that actually, by denying that pride, it doesn't lead to self-doubt or a downward state. It leads to an elevated state, because you feel more connected, just through that simple humility.
Yeah, why affirm I'm a wave when you can affirm I'm a wave on the entire ocean? There's greater strength in identifying with something much greater than the individual self. Pride in itself, historically, how many times has pride led before a fall? And pride is considered the first ever sin when the devil thought all of his powers were his own and decided to rebel out of ingratitude to God. The attitude of pride is what kind of separates us from the creator, higher power, God, whatever concept or word you want to use for it, because we start to imagine that these borrowed powers are our own. And that all begins with thinking, I am the doer. There was another technique I've used for almost 20 years to just keep inner peace. And it's this, do problems in life ever stop? No, it seems like you solve the problem of the day and tomorrow brings a new problem, right?
Yeah.
When I finished university and I started working in the real world, it kind of came to me that, getting good and having a really good system for handling problems in life is probably the most important of skills to get down. And so I kind of intuitively came to the conclusion that whenever there's a problem in life, there's 3 questions I can ask myself to bring peace and transcend that problem. And the first question I ask is, what's good about this? So no matter what it is, I start with what's good about this, because it presupposes there's good in everything. So that immediately relaxes us. Even if you look at like the creation story in the Bible, God creates everything and says it was good. It's not like God created something and said, whoops, sorry about that, that was a mistake. I'm sorry I created the raccoon that's going to get into your garbage.
Right.
We want to be able to see it with a God's eye view. And I think that's what the what's good question comes down to. So I'll ask myself, what's good about this? And then I don't just say it once, because it comes down to like dosage. You need to take a sufficient dosage of a medicine in order to be healed. So I answer it as many times as I can. And then once I think I've done as much as I can, I do 2 or 3 more. And those last 2 or 3 are always the best ones, because you kind of get the surface level stuff out of the way, and that's when you really stretch your perspective. So then I go into what can be learned. And I'll go into, what can be learned about this situation, the people involved in this situation, historical precedent, what can I learn about myself here? I try to unpack all the learning lessons in it. And a lot of times what can be learned is maybe I've told myself something that isn't entirely true about this situation, and that's why I'm stressing out. Or, I'm making some blind assumptions here. Or maybe I'm confusing my preferences for reality with realistic expectations of reality, right? We want to learn our lessons, so that we don't have to suffer through those problems anymore. So I think, wisdom is one of the greatest investments. And I think just really unpacking what can be learned gives us immunity to that type of problem in future. As Sri Yukteswar says, wisdom is the greatest cleanser. And then the third question I'll ask is how can I make it better? And that's an important one because people get caught up in circular problem-focused thinking. They'll ruminate on a problem for days, weeks. Have you ever met anyone that when something doesn't go their way, it's like they can't let it go?
Yes, I have.
Okay, I think we all have, right? How fun is it to be around them when they're doing that? You know? And how fun is it to be that person? I've been that person before, I'm sure. Yeah, and how fun is it to be in that state?
Not so much.
The question that gets us out of that state is, how can I make it better? How can I make a short-term impact? How can I make a long-term impact? How can I make it better for others involved? And I think the best way to come up with a good solution is to come up with as many solutions as you can. So I really rep that out to fatigue. And so I've kind of used this process. I call it game changer. And it's like any problem in life, what's good about this? What can be learned? How can you make it better? And I've used this process for 20 years. And I've done a lot of mental toughness coaching with pro and Olympic athletes. And this is sort of the cornerstone of the coaching, is just training them to think like this automatically. So that when a problem happens in your life, you see it as an opportunity. Because you've done it so many times where you've taken something that seems all bad and you've done what's good about this, what can be learned, how can you make it better? And you realize that problems are nothing but fertilizer for your personal growth. You know, if there weren't any problems, we wouldn't awaken our higher potential and self-realize. And what are we here for anyway? In the same way that in the gym people learn to love the burn with a weight training workout, I think we need to love the burn of our life problems, knowing that it can make us stronger and give us more endurance.
I totally agree. I feel like that's one of the central keys. We're in Earth School to learn these things, to grow through challenges, and transmuting that the suffering means seeing the challenge as an opportunity and embracing that, and that's it seems like a beautiful process for how you've come to that. It reminds me a lot of Byron Katie's work, where she has 4 questions she asks of any thought that's troubling us. Is it true? Can I really know it's true? Who would I be without the thought? And then she has you look at the opposite of whatever thought you're telling to see how, oh, actually I could be telling the completely opposite story, drawing the completely opposite conclusion. And it might be more true than the perspective that I'm having. And in both situations, what your process, her process, to me, it's a very similar. Let's get space. Let's get distance from the one who's trapped in the problem to see. Oh, there are no problems. If you're far enough removed from it, that it's just a movement of energy.
I think one of the biggest challenges we have is self-deception. One of the things that I do that's similar to Byron Katie is I tell people that if a thought doesn't bring you inner peace, there's something wrong with that thought. All right, and that comes from Peace Pilgrim herself, who I think is an amazing role model for all of us, because she walked 28 years across North America talking about inner peace to bring outer peace in the world, and she carried nothing but a toothbrush, a comb, and a pen, and she didn't eat unless people offered her food, and didn't take shelter unless it was freely offered. So she's sleeping outside and doesn't know if she's going to eat every day, and she did that for 28 years. Peace Pilgrim says, if the thought doesn't bring you inner peace, there's something wrong with that thought. So I'll ask somebody, okay, what thought is it that's not bringing you peace right now? Then the first thing we must do is we must come to the conclusion that it's not a good idea to think that thought. Because otherwise, when you try to overcome your thought, your subconscious is going to be yelling at you no. And you're going to be creating a conflict within yourself. So I'll really unpack, why is it a bad idea to think that way? Somebody might think this, I'm going to run out of money. Okay, why is it a bad idea to think that way? Does it limit your joyful experience of life? Does it raise your stress? Does it make you not as ideal of a person to be around? Does it heighten your fears and anxieties? Does it get you stuck in a scarcity mentality? And because of all this mental stress, does it lead to physical stress and tension in the muscles and body? And does it lower your immune system and everything else? And we go into all this, and then I say, what's the cost-benefit analysis of thinking that thought? Telling yourself I'm going to run out of money? Probably zero benefit. Cost 100%. Why would an intelligent person invest in something like that? So I'm really big on, we got to convince people it's a bad idea to do that first. And then I say, is it the undeniable truth, or is this just a story you're telling yourself? Like, what is the absolute evidence that this is true? And usually people will come to conclude that, it's just a story they're telling themselves. And then I'll say, what's the empowering truth? what can we replace this with? What would you have to believe to succeed in this area? And in this example, it might be like, I can always create value and get paid for that value. Perfect. Well, now your thoughts are going to be different. Your thoughts are going to be all about, how can I create value? Right? And then if I'm creating value all the time, I don't have to worry about money. Like, the money's just going to take care of itself. But it's all about finding the ways that we tell ourselves these things and then shifting out of it. I think it's really about purifying those thoughts. You once said something to the effect that these unhealthy thoughts will come knocking on our door, but you don't have to invite it in, sit it down, and have tea with it. So,
yeah, that's Suzuki, a Zen Buddhist. Yeah.
This is where it comes down to discernment. Realizing how powerful your thoughts are, and then really discerning what are the thoughts that lead to beautiful emotions and what are the thoughts that lead to suffering emotions. The more that you think the thoughts that lead to beautiful emotions, the more you're going to attract beauty in your life, whether it's in the relationships you have and the connections with people, or even the beauty of nature.
Beautiful. Well said. So do you work with people doing this sort of process?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Right now, I do a combination of things. I travel around teaching people a system of natural healing for the body, assessing and correcting using physical exercises. So it's more of a hands-off solution to help people get rid of chronic aches and pains, combined with mental toughness. And it's the Exercise Therapy Association is the name of it. So I travel around teaching that to health professionals, and then I also do Zoom life coaching calls with people from all around the world. And so a lot of times when I get people on, I'm helping them get clear on exactly what the problem is, because I think a lot of people are confused. They're like, something's off, I just don't know what it is. And then I don't know what to do about it. I like to take inspiration from the Bhagavad Gita, where it's like, your life is really a battle between the positive and negative qualities inside. What is the opponent that's got a leg up on you right now? Maybe you're struggling with pride. Maybe you're struggling with some sort of a desire that's kind of creating restlessness. So if it was a desire that they have that's maybe not a healthy desire, maybe it's a desire for something like being famous, which is a common one I've had to help people with. Then what I'll do is I'll tell them, you got two options. You can either get famous and go through all the trouble just to realize it's not going to bring you everything you wanted, okay? And then you'll have to start over again in the next life. Take a look at, Kate Spade, Anthony Bourdain, lead singer of Linkin Park, Robin Williams. All those people thought it would bring them everything they wanted, right? And they invested everything into it in that lifetime. So usually what I'll do with people is I'll say, okay, what's the desire here? It's to be famous. And I'll say, how is that desire overrated? And then I'll be like, does it necessarily guarantee inner peace? Does it necessarily make life easier and simpler? Does the novelty of it wear off after a time? What troubles and difficulties would it bring in your life? Are you going to have haters and stalkers and people that are trying to use you to try to leech off your fame? Is it going to be hard for you to go out in public without people bugging you and harassing you? Are people going to try to sue you all the time in frivolous lawsuits? Are people going to be making up scandalous stories about you just to sell papers or get people to visit their websites and read their articles and stuff? And eventually, is the public going to want to hate you after a time? Put you up on a pedestal only to knock you down? How is this a hollow victory? Even if you do get famous for a while, isn't it possible that the public is just going to be fickle and decide they want something else, and now you're living in your own shadow for the rest of your life? So I really try to take them through that experience and imagine it to be true in order that they can get disillusioned by that desire, so it's no longer stirring them up on the inside and robbing them of their inner peace. Because you might notice that when you really want something and you don't have it yet, then inner peace is just not yours anymore. It's at a distance until you get what you are actually looking for. So it's a matter of just assessing somebody on what are the desires you have that are benefiting you and which desires are robbing your inner peace right now.
And identifying that inner peace is the thing you want and not the other thing that you're trying to get.
Or real long-term happiness.
Right. Yeah. However,
I just say we're on a journey. You're the hero, I'm the guide. We're going to the kingdom of real long-term happiness. It's what you always wanted. You keep taking all these detours. You keep thinking how the most fit body is going to do it. You think having like the best girlfriend ever is going to do it, the best job, being famous, being wealthy, everything else. Forget the detours. And let's just take the straight route to get to what you want.
Absolutely. And to me, to boil that down to its essence, wise word of a sage comes to mind, Shivananda, Swami Shivananda, saying something to the effect of, there's a lot of atheists in the world, so-called, but I say that there are none, because we all want happiness, and God is happiness. That truth, when you boil it down to that, the peace that's there in the soul, when we're united with the reality behind the seeming surface of things, when we're not reaching out for the thing, but we're sitting back in that, then it's yours.
Yeah. And when I talk to atheists, and I've talked to a number of them, and seen them shift, what I really say is to them, tell me what concept of God you were told to believe in.
Yeah.
And then they might tell me something about this vengeful, angry male with a white-gray beard who's throwing lightning bolts at us. And I'd be like, look, I'd be an atheist too if that's what I was told to believe. Like, let's be honest here.
I don't buy that either, right?
I think atheists are more spiritual than a lot of people who just blindly believe what they're told.
I agree. Right, yeah.
And then one of the things I'll say to them is, how do we know that the wind exists? You can't see the wind. You can't put it in a test tube necessarily. The only way we know that wind exists is because we can see its effect on things. We can hear it whistling through the trees and blowing the leaves and feel it blowing through your hair. So I say, first of all, congratulations, because I'm glad you didn't settle for the trap of blind belief in some sort of a concept of God that's really a rumor from other humans. Why don't we decide on your own personal experience in order to know the truth about this God thing? And I say, why don't we play a game of divine hide and seek and see if we can find evidence that there is some sort of a God thing out there. And I'll say, let's start with your human body and the power of formation. How did all these random molecules come together to become you? Is that just happenstance and chaos? Or is there some sort of order behind it, a divine order? To say it's happenstance that even your human body has come together is like dumping a pile of bricks on the ground and having them randomly assemble themselves into a cathedral. There must be some sort of intentional, intelligent force behind that. We might call that God. It's the same force that is also behind your conscience. Like, where is your conscience? Can you measure where in your body is your conscience? You might say that's your spiritual life coach. It's something outside of you that's it lets you know when you've gone wrong. It gives you encouragement when you've done right. It just makes sure that you don't go too far off the path and create too much misery for yourself. You might look at that as God actually directly communicating with you. Don't just call it a conscience. Just take a look at the universe itself and how everything is in such a mathematical harmony where a departure of values, just the tiniest percent, would create an existence in which no life was possible at all. If you were to find an open-faced watch in the middle of the woods, you know that there has to be a watchmaker. And then if you take a look at this grand orchestration of a solar system and everything else, you know that there must be some sort of an intelligence behind it. I was in an astronomy seminar once, and I realized that we wouldn't be alive without the planet Jupiter. We might have thought Jupiter serves no other purpose than just being something interesting for us to learn about and be quizzed on in grade 1. But Jupiter, apparently the gravitational pull, pulls all the meteorites that would otherwise pummel Earth with an apocalyptic level of meteorites. So it basically serves like a vacuum in our solar system. Who put the love for you in the hearts of other beings? Did they do it through a linear, intentional progression, or does it seem like that just sort of happened for your benefit? You might look at it as though the love of God is playing hide and seek through the love of all those other beings in your life. Kind of like sunshine coming through a stained glass window in different sizes, shapes, and colors. It's the same source behind that love. Like, what's keeping these people, keeping their hearts beating, keeping them breathing while they sleep, doing their immunity, doing their digestion, all that invisible support they're getting? We will play this game and we will just rep it out to fatigue until they're like, okay, there's something there. And I say, let's just call that something provable thing God. And the more you play divine hide and seek, and you're looking for that evidence of an intentional and intelligent support behind everything in our existence, the more supported and loved you'll feel, the more inner peace you'll have. For me, this whole story, human story, it's a love story between creator and creation. We can't love an abstraction we don't know and understand. It's like if you have a secret admirer, at some point you got to be like, reveal yourself or I'm going to go looking for you. So I feel like that's what we have to do with God in order to actually love God. Is we actually have to take active steps to understand what God is and appreciate God. And the more we do that, the more we realize we're not the doer. We're like, oh my gosh, you've been helping me in so many other ways than I thought, and not taking credit this whole time. You take a look at some of these animals, like a raccoon. It's got those cute little teddy bear ears, right? A little cute, mischievous mask. These little hands that are so warm. If a raccoon ever holds hands with you, it'll just melt your heart. Like if it just looks at you and holds your hand, it's the warmest hands. And then just for fun, they got this ring tail. I'm like, that's intentional. As cool as we think that animal is, how cool would it be to really get to know the inventor behind that animal, the inventor behind the dolphin, the inventor behind the chipmunk or the dog? As cool as we think all these things are, imagine how cool it is to actually get to know the creator behind those things.
And that creator's in the creation. That creator has come, like, it's not the watchmaker that stepped back from the watch that was created. It's sometimes a word used is it's a hologram where the divine is infused in the creation itself, right? It's not like you have to abstractly think about who did this. There's an experiential,
It's like, I created the raccoon, then I took off to some other galaxy.
Yeah, exactly. No,
you're right.
It's here, wherever here is, and wherever now is. It's in it. It is it. I mean, I don't know what it is anymore. Sometimes at some point the words fail, but that thing to see the divine in everything is such a gift to give. And so,
thank you. Your example reminds me of what beloved Yogacharya J. Oliver Black once said. We're kind of like fish in the ocean, and we don't know whether we believe in water or not. We're literally swimming in it, and I think we're swimming in the presence of the divine.
But it's the hide and seek metaphor really works for me because it's that play and that it's a loving version of that, that's it. That's as far as I understand it exactly. You put your finger right on the human. I don't want to call it a dilemma. The experience, the richness, the riddle. It's
like escape room. We're trying to escape the delusions and find the way to truth. People do that for fun. It's like maybe we did these human lives for fun in the same way. Although I have to credit Yogananda for the whole concept of divine hide and seek. I think at the end of the day, like I'm just here to be a friend to all because I think that's the way we get through this human experience best when we stick together. I always challenge myself to try to figure out a way to love everybody. I say, it's on me. And why do I want to love everybody? Because life is better when you love everybody. Somebody might say, well, how could you love this politician? They're so arrogant and greedy and whatever. And I'd say, you know what? I just pretend I'm his dog because I bet you he's really good to his dog. Whatever it has to be in order to be like, you know what? If I had to come back and be a dog, I bet that guy would be a good owner. He'd probably give me the top quality dog food and brag about me to everybody. You just got to find that angle because I think, we're all in this school of life and we're all at different grade levels. And so, you have some that are more advanced in the high school level and some are more like elementary school and some of us kindergartens. And I'm just grateful for those in the higher grade levels that have reached down to help us through. Life is better when you have more inner peace. And rather than being distracted with all these surface level things that ultimately have a low payoff, whatever's on TV and what's going on in the news and sports, we should keep the main thing, and we will suffer until we do.
Amen. I love, you have the practical approach of just loving feels better. Peace feels better. We all want lasting happiness. Is this going to do it? Is that not? That was an important revelation to me to see just it's not that we should believe anything or should be this way or that way or the other. It's just like, no, this way of living just doesn't serve my own happiness, let alone how I'm then affecting others and loving others. So I'm hearing you bring that in time and time again, and I'm grateful for that.
Whenever I see somebody, let's say somebody's being narcissistic, I think, well, that's an experiment. Eventually they're going to realize narcissism does not make you happy because the world will never conform in the way that you think it should. But that's an experiment, and when you suffer enough, you'll be done with that experiment. Right? And it's just kind of like there's all these different experiments we run through, but then I always try to take a look at the lives of the great saints and spiritual masters who found what we're all looking for. And I'd say, I'd rather just follow their recipe and trust them.
They know. They're clearly beings of love and light and peace. They know. I don't seem to know as much.
Do we really have enough time to figure it all out? At some point we have to find those strategic shortcuts. And I think to role model somebody who has what you want is one of the best ways to do it, because that's what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I found that's given me more payoff than anything in life.
Yeah, me too. And then the fact that they're all saying the same thing is also a
Essentially,
great,
yes.
you know, a
There's
pointer
many
to
there's
exactly.
many paths up the mountain of truth.
Mm-hmm.
When I tell people, I don't know all the paths, okay, so I don't judge the path somebody's taking.
Yeah.
If we don't know necessarily that that's the right or wrong way for them to live their life, because we don't know all the paths for them to evolve to the next level of being and to the next level of their happiness. And sometimes the wrong way is the right way, because we get a very memorable lesson on how not to live. So we're here for our education and entertainment. Let's not forget the entertainment part.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Too
Enjoy
often
it.
we
Yeah.
take it too serious.
Yeah, that is true.
When somebody just kind of like lays it on me, they're like, oh, this is going on, and this is going on, blah, blah, the world's falling apart and everything else. I'm like, man, you are so life obsessed, it's ridiculous. Like, come on. Like, why are you trying to lay down your dreams of perfection in this world? Can't you see everything's ashes to ashes, dust to dust? Would you check into a hotel and spend your whole weekend making the hotel nice? No, get out there and stop taking it so seriously. You're going to be checking out of this reality at some point. You know?
Absolutely.
Healthy detachment to this life and reality. That's the point I'm trying to get at.
No, it's well taken, and even for myself, it's good to laugh at yourself and find that lightness, that distance. That Can you tell anyone listening, just, I guess anything, any last words that you would like to share, but also, you know, where they can find you online, or if they're interested in any of these things that we're talking about, where they might go.
Yeah, sure. I can be found on YouTube and TikTok, Nature Walks with Fox on TikTok, Brendan J. Fox on YouTube. I don't know who you are listening right now, but I know that you're on the same journey Brian and I are on. And if you haven't heard it in a long time, I want to let you know that you matter. And people care about you. Even though we don't know you, we care about you because we know the journey you're going through being human. And we know that sometimes our dreams fall apart and things don't go according to plan and we're confused and everything else. But I also want to remind you that you have incredible capacity for goodness. And never forget that you can always be 10 out of 10 loving. You know, you can always help other people and find a way to help others and feel good about who you are being. Whether it's just take a friend out for coffee and just make them feel good, call somebody up and just let them know how much you appreciate having them in your life. You can water a wilted plant, make a sad puppy wag its tail, whatever it is, feed the birds. But just never forget that you have a superhero power to create goodness in this world, and you can do it in any moment you want, and you'll feel better when you do. And we're all rooting for you in the game of life.
What a wonderful closing message. Thank you so much, Brendan, for sitting down and sharing, you know, all of this, your story, your wisdom, your light, your life.
It's an honor and a pleasure. I'm a huge fan of your podcast.
Thank you.
And I listened to every episode and I loved it and I took notes, and I love that you put notes online so I didn't have to like write out these huge long quotes. Like I think there was a David Hawkins quote and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna write that. Oh my gosh, he put it online. Just copy and paste it. I'm a big fan of what you're doing because ultimately you're benefiting suffering humanity, which means that you are extending the olive branch to be a friend to help out all of these people. You may never even get to know and meet them all, but I'm grateful I got a chance to meet you and here to be your friend for life and beyond, no matter what. You can do whatever you want, but you will never get me to stop respecting you and caring about you.
I will offer you the same in return, Brendan.
Eternal friendship.